So welcome everybody. My name is Dan Poston. I'm the board president of RISE International. And it is, I didn't have in my notes that there would be applause yet, so that's a bonus there. That's great. So, but truly, it's a privilege to be here. And honestly, on behalf of the entire board, it is wonderful to be with you here, to be with you remotely. I know not everyone is able to be in person tonight. And we actually have some folks joining us live from Angola. So one of the positive things, if you can think of it that way, from the past year and a half, 2 years, is that we've actually been able to engage folks in Angola as part of our annual benefits. So that's really cool. Caleb, if you're watching, shout out to you and specifically. So thank you. Caleb's one of our data entry guys for the monitoring and evaluation that we'll talk about a little bit further. But in all sincerity, thank you for being here at our 2021 benefit, Opening Schools, Minds, and Opportunities. I wanted to spend a moment just to share a brief history about RISE if you're unfamiliar. RISE is a nonprofit organization that builds schools in rural, almost inaccessible parts of Angola, with the idea to educate children, empower communities, and really provide different opportunities for the future, using education as that transportation vehicle to provide the change that otherwise wouldn't exist. After a fight for independence from Portugal that ended in 1975, Angola entered a brutal 27-year civil war in which a lot of the infrastructure, particularly schools and especially in rural area, was absolutely devastated. And so after trips to refugee camps in Namibia and Zambia to visit folks who fled Angola, RISE was really thinking towards the future and what could have a long-lasting impact for generations to come. And of course, it turned to education and thinking that not only does that help a person in the moment, but the multiplying effect that is for that individual person, their families, their communities for years and decades to come. And so since 2003, RISE has been focused on building rural primary schools. And to date, and you're going to see here, this is actually a really cool example, but I'll just say to date, there's 191 schools built, a couple more that haven't been officially dedicated. And each year, over 137,000 kids have an opportunity to have education as a result of RISE. Pretty incredible. And seeing that applause is warranted, but also warranted for the people in this room, the people joining us remotely, because without your support, none of that would have been possible. So in all sincerity, thank you for that. Wanted to show you some of the really cool work we've been doing in terms of tracking the students, the schools that, on our website and in our database. So right here, I'm going to turn to the screen for a moment and point out some key figures here. If you go to the top, you'll see 2004 through 2021. That marks the year that's highlighted, and then below on the screen is sort of the data that fills in that year. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see 2004, 11 schools were opened, 33 classrooms, and just over 4,000 students. If you go down to the gray area below it, you'll see as we move on through the timeline that it's a cumulative total there. So the orange is the highlight of a specific year, the gray is the cumulative total. Beneath that, you'll see pins, so pin drops of all the different schools. So there's 11 schools, highly concentrated in the VA province there, but as you see over the coming years, it'll fill out more. And then on the right, you'll see the name of a school that's highlighted, and this one happens to be Chilanda, the very first school, still in great working condition. That's an image there, and then right below it is sort of the Google Earth image too. So really cool. All this is on our website and a way to track the progress that RISE has made since 2003. And Nate, I think now is going to be able to help us show a little timeline here. Oh, I'm sorry. This just highlights to 2018. So you can kind of see how it builds over time, the cumulative total. So again, up top there, 2018 is highlighted, 5 schools were built. And then right below it, you'll see the cumulative total. Below that, you'll see the enormous increase in pin drops. And then over to the right, we have a highlighted school that was actually part of a benefit in the past in Jele. And you can see the completed school, which is really cool to see these images of schools created that we have in our minds, that we hear about at benefits, that some of us get to travel to, and some of us, and frankly, many of us will never get to travel to, but really an idea and a visual of both the school infrastructure building and also the kids that every day call that school home. And then below it, you can see the Google map again. And so this will be a little timeline here over the years, which is really cool to just see the cumulative effect and then of course impact of all the schools, the infrastructure, that while they are buildings, they're a really important component that allows for the community building, the education, the transformation, the opportunities to take place. Really cool. So this just is a summary here. So 191 schools, 983 classrooms, 137,000 plus kids each year, which adds up to an incredible return on investment, and one that can never be fully measured in dollars and cents. That's not the point. The point is we need your dollars and cents so that we can continue that impact, but it's the transformation of as a human being's life and the impact that person can have for their family, their community, and their country. In 2017, you heard us talk about a really cool new opportunity that we had with Educate a Child and the ExxonMobil Foundation to provide 24,000 more kids with the opportunity to have access to education. That was 4 years ago. It's hard to believe. It's in some ways, it seems so long ago, to be honest with you, in terms of all the work that's been done with Educate a Child and ExxonMobil, all the great work that's been done on the ground in Angola. And then it also seems like a flash of the eye. So in 2017, we committed to build about 25 schools as part of this 24,000 more project so that we could include 24,000 more kids in these schools. The project was supposed to close out in July of 2020, but of course we all know COVID happened. And so it was extended actually to about the same time this past year in 2021. So part of that was also a monitoring and evaluation component, something that we as an organization as RISE have been really interested in pursuing, but this project honestly helped sort of accelerate it for us. But we were able to track baseline data, the enrollment, attendance, and retention of 24,000 students. And excuse me, we're actually mandated to as part of this. And so that's an incredible feat for an organization the size of RISE. And we did so in remarkable fashion. And so if you look up here, this is truly a celebration of a project that has officially concluded, with the hopes that there will be a project in the future, but looking at what we were thinking we were going to do versus what we actually did. And again, this is a result of the partnership with wonderful people, the generosity of those in this room and joining us on the live stream tonight. So instead, we built 26 schools as opposed to 25. There are 250 classrooms that are newly built as a part of this 4-year project. We thought we were going to give 24,000 students an opportunity for education. We gave over 28, almost 29,000 students an opportunity for education. We had been committed to start a monitoring and evaluation data program. We've kept that up, and Rachel, who we'll hear from in a moment, has done a remarkable job of individually tracking all of those students. Unbelievable. And that was building the systems to support that as well. And then we estimated that there would be about a $7.8 million project, as you can see, for just under $5 million from RISE. And at the end of the project, it was about 8.1 that was raised and 5.1 from RISE International and the people in this room. So again, this is a celebration, it's a thank you, and it's also a challenge for what's possible to come in the future. You know, we really have demonstrated, I think, as a result of this project, the ability to scale, the ability to produce. And it's really the only thing that is a hindrance is the funding. We have wonderful people in place here in Angola that is a truly remarkable and unique partnership. And I want to just spend a moment here introducing Rachel, who many of you know already, but has really stepped into this role of the monitoring and evaluation, which was a key component to the Educate a Child grant, but was also something that RISE had felt was really important. So we knew that what we were doing was actually making an impact. And I think that's a really critical component. And Rachel has done a phenomenal job of collecting data, building teams here in Angola. And she is going to present a little bit of that data tonight so you can see what some of that process is like and understand how this is valuable for both you as supporters of RISE, but also us as an organization. And so without further ado, I'd love to welcome Rachel Cole, our Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator.
Thank you, brother-in-law. You didn't catch on, I'm Rachel Cole, as in the Coles, Lynn Cole, Executive Director. Believe it or not, I do have the credentials though, to be the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator. So thank you, Dan. And as he mentioned, again, I'm Rachel. I'm RISE's Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator. And tonight, I want to tell you a bit about what it is I do, where we are with our data, and where I'd like to go in the future. I'll use a few acronyms, just as a note. M&E for Monitoring and Evaluation, EAC for Educate a Child, and OOSC for Out of School Children. I was hired to develop and implement RISE's M&E program throughout our partnership with EAC. And that meant, as per EAC requirements, I was responsible for tracking and reporting the enrollment, attendance, and retention of 24,000 individual children. A fairly daunting task as a one-person department at the start. Of course, I couldn't do it alone. I have 3 wonderful assistants in Angola, Carla, Caleb, who's watching with us tonight, and Francisco. They help me build relationships at schools and collect data on the ground. They continue to carry this work forward throughout the pandemic since I've been unable to travel, and we absolutely would not have reached our goal without them. I also have a data entry assistant in the US, Lexi. She's here with us tonight. Also with us tonight is Nate. Thank God for Nate and his nephew Eddie. They built our database on FileMaker Pro. And this is where we store all of our data on every child we enroll. According to the World Bank, the learning crisis in Angola is largely driven by 5 factors, one of which is a paucity of data on learning. Student records are handwritten, and there is no place to share or analyze student progress. Schools are required to keep a file on each student. And I use the term required loosely, as I have never seen a complete file among the thousands I've looked through. This is the extent of a student file, 5 or 6 pages. An enrollment form, a birth certificate, proof of yellow fever and tetanus vaccinations, 2 photos, proof of a physical, and attendance records. While these items are required for enrollment, many students don't have official documentation. This student was born in 2006, and she received her birth certificate in 2017. This is a fairly common occurrence. Vaccine cards are only on file at 1 of the 26 schools. 29% of our students reported having been to the doctor for a physical. I don't know about you, but I was required to have a physical every year before elementary school. I've never seen attendance records in a student file. Due to the lack of data, RISE utilized this as an opportunity to create a more thorough data set detailing the background of individual students in order to obtain a more complete picture of OOSC as they begin their primary education. Using paper forms and interviews, we collect personal information on the home, health, family, etc. All the data that is collected is then put into our database along with attendance and end of year results, something Lexi helps me out with. While I was nervous about reaching the goal of 24,000 OOSC, we ended up surpassing it with 28,784 students. Those students would fill every seat at the Chicago Theater 8 times over. They would fill nearly 70% of the seats at Wrigley Field. Of the students we enrolled, 51% are girls. Schools where more boys enrolled tend to be smaller and more rural. In regards to retention, that is, students who enroll 1 year and return to school the next, EAC set a goal of 80%. Our average retention rate is 90%. The 6,778 OOSC who enrolled in our second cohort during 2019, 6,110 returned to school in 2021 after a year of being out of school. This partnership with EAC served as a catalyst for developing and deepening our M&E capacity. But with limited resources and a huge number of requirements, we were not able to delve as deeply into the data as I would have liked. My hope for the future is that we can narrow the scope, that we can narrow the scale and increase the scope, focusing less on quantity and more on quality. We know that building schools matters, but how much? What kind of effect does the physical building have on how and what students learn? If we can secure funding, my hope is to conduct a randomized controlled trial quantifying the impact of access to basic infrastructure and curriculum on students' learning outcomes. This project initiated the much needed expansion of our M&E capacity. We will continue to develop and expand on what we've built because data show a continued need and longing for education. Better data means better schools. Thank you.
What is a school? What does it really mean to have a school and access to education? A school is a safe, organized space for teaching and learning. It's a place to come together, a place that reflects the collaboration of students, teachers, parents, the community, and partners.
A school is a building, but it is much more than a structure. It is an opportunity. It provides hope and a future. Education is something that no one can take from you.
A new school is a symbol, a gift, in places where accessibility is limited or non-existent. And there is excitement, celebration, and immense gratitude. Every child has the right to education. Yet, Angolan children face many barriers. A history of conflict, oppression, poverty, lack of infrastructure, education, healthcare, and clean water. Some have makeshift classrooms or are under trees, carrying their own chair. Many have no school at all.
RISE gives starting point, providing access to education. One child, one classroom, one school at a time.
RISE builds primary schools in rural Angola to educate children, empower communities, and contribute to the rebuilding of the country. A school building gives access and provides protection from rain, wind, and cold. Classrooms facilitate learning. Students are more engaged, able to concentrate, and focus on their studies. Children can learn, think, dream about their future.
A escola é importante porque é onde estamos a saber ler e escrever.
Facilitador para ajudar os outros, como eles estão doentes. Gostamos aqui da sala.
The classrooms. O que mais?
As cadeiras, a pintura.
Typical itself. Pintura.
As lâmpadas, as janelas,
Windows.
as portas.
The door.
All children deserve the chance to go to school, to have a seat in the classroom.
Everything begins to change with education. It is the foundation for improved health, economic growth, and social well-being, creating a ripple effect for years to come. Build a school, educate a child, empower a community. Build, educate, empower.
Those some adorable kids. It's really delightful to be together in person, to see you here tonight. Greetings to those of you watching virtually, and thanks to everyone for joining us. I am really grateful as I look around the room for the depth of commitment and friendship and investment. Tonight, we celebrate 18 years of building schools and over 137,000 kids with a seat in the classroom each year. The dream of building one school has led to years of building schools, and the desire to help a few kids have the chance to learn to read and write has multiplied, giving thousands access to education each year. For those new to our story, let me give you a little background. Andrew, my late husband, was born, grew up, and is buried in Angola. He loved climbing trees to pick guavas and mangoes with his little friend Mordecai, swimming in the Cachilala River, going after rabbits with his slingshot, and playing with the village kids. It was home until their family moved to the US when he was 12. During a tentative peace in 1997, Andrew returned to Angola with his dad after a nearly 32-year absence. We traveled the following year to celebrate our 25th anniversary. That's to Angola, not Hawaii. That was 23 years ago. We spent time with friends in the capital and in the center of Angola. Every building was marked by mortar rounds and bullet holes, with people living in the ruins. The hospital had no medicine, no water, 4 or 5 kids on each bed, surrounded by hurting families. We walked for several hours with a police escort to Chilanda, where Andrew spent his boyhood. The road was mined, the mission leveled, yet having felt forgotten, people were thrilled to see us. We were both gripped and could not return to life as normal. We shared the story, and many of you joined us in the unfolding journey. The war escalated, and unable to get visas to Angola, some of you traveled with us and our kids to refugee camps in Namibia and Zambia. We offered workshops, we met amazing people whose friendships broadened our perspectives and enriched our lives. People like Adriano Wambo and his family, now our RISE Angola country director. The African Refugee Committee was founded in 2001 in response to the desperate needs. We provided blankets, food, clothing, small business loans, and college scholarships. When the war ended, a small group sat in our living room and with input from and wisdom of our Angolan friends, committed to build schools to give kids access to education where there was none. The African Refugee Committee became RISE International with a focus on impacting education in Angola. The first school was built at Chilanda in 2003. Andrew and I traveled to Angola with the team in July 2004, and in August, Andrew died suddenly at age 50. Unbelievable and devastating. Married for 31 years, we did life together. Yet, this effort could not stop. So with family and friends, we committed to go forward. RISE is opening schools, minds, and opportunities. Education is a right, a strategic investment, and a driver of development. Every child should have the chance to go to school, to learn to read and write. Some children school in makeshift classrooms, some meet under trees. More than 2 million children do not have access to primary education at all. And so we build schools. RISE targets vulnerable and marginalized children in areas where accessibility is limited or non-existent. Our focus is to provide access to education by building schools, a critical foundation and starting point where learning takes place. RISE builds quality structures centrally located within the community with bathrooms and access to clean water, creating inclusive and equitable places of protection and safety. RISE delegates decision-making and authority to RISE Angola, our implementing partner. The approach is one of mutuality, and the last year again highlighted the wisdom of reliance on local leadership and insight. They masterfully managed and navigated the complexities of construction in the pandemic. And again, we could not have done this without them. School sites are identified in collaboration with the local government and Ministry of Education. They provide desks, chalkboards, textbooks, set the curriculum, and hire and pay the teachers. The local community participates, establishing a sense of ownership, commitment to the process, and to the education of their children. Upon completion, there's a dedication ceremony. The school is turned over to the community and Ministry of Education, and they are empowered to carry the process forward. RISE is opening schools. The pandemic amplified the harsh inequities and suffering across the country and around the world. The closure of schools in March 2020 affected 8.7 million learners in Angola. And without electricity, internet, or computers, there were no remote options. Since reopening in February of this year, 5 RISE-built schools have been dedicated. A school at Bolonguera, a very, very remote location where there's never been a school, was funded at last year's benefit. Many of you contributed to that. The money was wired, construction began, and the school was dedicated on February 3rd. Do your projects go that fast? The provincial governor, administrators, Ministry of Education officials, RISE Angola, the community, families, teachers, and students marked the special day. The mayor gratefully shared that without RISE, we could not move forward. I visited Kwawa in November of 2019. There were 5,000 kids at this one site in need of a school. The classrooms were used while under construction. That can only happen in places like Angola. Kids and teachers would shift from room to room when the team needed to put in windows or paint. Dedicated on June 1st, for them, this is a dream come true. And there's still another 4,000 that need a school. Kabaya and 11th of November, both funded by BP Angola, were dedicated on September 15th with celebration. I'm moved by photos of dedications, adhering to social distancing with kids standing in circles drawn on the ground, wearing masks and washing hands in places where there is no running water. Lonjambela was dedicated on September 17th, just a month ago. The community has waited for this moment for years, longing for a school and education for their children. One village leader expressed his gratitude. He didn't have the chance to go to school, but knows it will change the future for their children. Pure joy, delight, gratitude. This is what opening schools means.
Protocolo para receber. Muito obrigado. Nesse ponto.
School construction is a critical intervention for both enrolling and keeping kids in school. The World Bank reports that school building programs rank among the most effective educational interventions. A huge shortage of school infrastructure remains, so opening schools is a big deal. That facilitates opening minds. Kids are in class, excited to be there. The classrooms offer protection from sun, rain, cold, and wind, allowing students to be more engaged and focused on their studies. Inspiring principals and teachers lack resources and materials, but are committed, passionate, and persistent. They are grateful for classrooms in which to teach, challenge, encourage, and work toward improving learning outcomes. Literacy unlocks the door to learning throughout life, is essential to development and health, and opens the way for democratic participation and active citizenship. Building schools results in opening opportunities. Education is a key driver of social and economic growth and well-being, helping pave the way to a better future. The education of girls in particular has a multiplier effect. It empowers and enhances lives, ends cycles of poverty and disease, and provides a base for sustainable development. Basic education and literacy are fundamental building blocks necessary for economic empowerment. In addition to impacting students, jobs are created for building teams, teachers, and staff, and these serve as a stimulus to the local economy. With education, children have goals and dreams of what they want to be: teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers. Mr. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, states, "If we do not make an investment in education, everything else will fail. There is no better definition of sustainable development and no better pathway to realize this ambition than by educating every child." The problems locally and around the world are immense. We have the unique privilege of giving more kids in Angola access to education, impacting their lives and those of their families and communities, opening schools, minds, and opportunities now and for years to come.
I'm not sure my part is necessary after the arc of the story of Rise, but I'm been given a few moments, so I'm going to take it anyway. This is not a mystery. This is a benefit tonight. So I am the one that has the honor and privilege of asking you to give your gift tonight. And I want to just tell you a little bit about what specifically we are trying to raise money for. Perhaps you didn't come tonight thinking about an amount that you would give. Maybe you did. I do hope that you will suspend the amount in your head for a moment while I tell you a little bit about what we're hoping to do. We are specifically looking to fund a school tonight at Barrio Novo for 1,000 children who are in need of a school. We heard from Adriano that, and this isn't common particularly, that the young mayor from this place, who was a former teacher, actually brought leaders in the local area to him to request the school. And so they are very excited about the idea of having this new hope for a brilliant future for their kids. This is an agricultural community where the daily life is very hard. And yet, isn't it interesting that the thing they've asked for is a school, education for their children? I feel like I should stop and say, I do work at a school, so I have a lot of thoughts about American education, particularly during the pandemic. So that is a bias that I'm coming into this ask with tonight, I feel like I should say. But I'm not an educator. I found my way into working at the school where I am now, Baker, because of my son. And the reason that we ended up there is because we felt like he needed to be in a place that he would be seen and loved. I should probably add, for those that you don't know us, we are a white couple who adopted a Black son. And so it was very important to us that he be seen very clearly for all of who he is. And he is completely nurtured in that environment, and his learning has been totally unlocked. And so as a parent, I say that because I can relate to that notion of what it is to want something for your child for their future. I don't want to embarrass his second and third grade teacher, but she is here. Hello, Mrs. R, shout out. But what strikes me is that I, as a parent, cannot want my child to have the learning environment that I just described and then not care that there are hundreds of thousands of children elsewhere with no school at all. That matters to me. It is related to me. Honestly, this past year, being a school administrator during a pandemic, not that easy. There were a lot of demands, and I'm sure, you know, in the local news media, a lot of parents were concerned about their children falling behind. That wasn't particularly the case in our school, but that was a very common dialogue. And I struggle with that because there are over 2 million children in Angola without access to education at all. And I think it's really important that we contextualize this conversation. Beyond that, I know there's actually a tangible way that we can change that for children in Angola. We are living in a time where our mutuality and interdependence couldn't be more obvious, right? I mean, with COVID-19, racism, it's very obvious that everything is related. Our actions do in fact impact other people. And there's this quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be, and you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. So now, holding in your mind these 1,000 children in need of a school in Bairro Novo and the concept of mutuality and interdependence, I want to ask you that you help us reach our goal of raising $120,000 tonight. Now, before you get out your checkbook, your debit card, or whatever you're doing tonight, I need to tell you something. I was originally going to be saying we were raising $350,000, but because of generous donors, we already have $230,000. And this is, yes. This is significant because the school originally would have been built in 2 stages, and now we have the opportunity to do it all immediately. So practically speaking, if we reach our goal tonight, this means that 1,000 children can have access to school sometime next year. And beyond that, because of the way that RISE works, there would be job continuity for the construction team, which I think is an incredible aside. So in closing, I want to ask you that you really think deeply and dig deep tonight. When I reflect on my own life, and honestly, the very few things that I have control over, the thing I know about the donation that I give to RISE, that my husband and I give, the time, the energy, all of that, is I know for a fact that it is going to make a difference for children in Angola. And I think hearing from Rachel in particular tonight with the data, and I feel like filling in that piece, that those of us that have been involved with RISE for a long time, it's just this other level of information to be able to see that. And I just, I feel like something about the pandemic in particular, at least in my life, has really right-sized a lot of things. It's put a lot of things in perspective, even more than other events in my life, about what matters and what doesn't matter. And I think it's significant to be involved with something like RISE, that you know for sure that making a commitment is going to make a difference in other people's lives. So I'm going to ask that you grab your flip chart and think about your commitment. You can write a credit card number down on the card. You can write a check. Lauren can swipe your card if you like. If you're watching with us on Zoom, you can give at riseinternational.org. But in great anticipation of their new school, the children at Bairro Novo have said thank you in an adorable video, which I want you to see.
Thank you, Mike.
Not that they had expectation about the money that we were raising tonight when they said that, but it sure would be great to make that a full thank you this evening. I wanted to say something. If you're worried about what might happen if we raise more than $120,000 tonight, I think it's pretty clear that there are many children in Goal that need a school, and I think it's very obvious that RISE would immediately move on with that money and keep building. So don't be worried about that. While you're filling out your commitment card, there is going to be a video on the screen from another school that RISE has built that is darling. So I encourage you to watch that while you are making your commitment. And I am honored to be the one to be able to ask you to give tonight. All right, I have other great news. We have dessert, coffee, more beer from the Sketchbook, which is amazing. And Tom and Quinn are walking around if you do have your envelope ready for them. So enjoy the rest of your time together. Thank you.